Hi, I'm Jeff Poulsen, Executive Director of the Jewish Heritage Fund for Excellence and Chair of the Greater Louisville Project Policy Board. Thank you for joining us. I'm grateful to be with you all today. The Greater Louisville Project has issued its 2019 Competitive City Update, the flow of community investment, taking a comprehensive look at how the public, private, and government sectors invest in our community. As the report was going to print in early 2020, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. The GLP held the release to better understand how that would impact our community and how this data could best be used to spur community engagement in our recovery. As Louisvillians cope with both the short-term and long-term implications of the virus and the disproportionate impact on some parts of the community, it is clear that 2020 will be a turning point. This report highlights the opportunity. How we respond will define what kind of city Louisville becomes after the crisis. By coming together to understand the data, we can ensure that we leverage our dollars as wisely as possible.
If you want to understand somebody, don't listen to their words. Instead, see where they spend their time and money. That's the premise of this year's Greater Louisville Project report. Looking at our investment in our citizens across the social, public, and private sectors, we can see that our peers, communities with similar resources and similar needs, are making different choices. Particularly in the social and public spheres, many of our peers are investing more than we are, and many of them are getting better outcomes. The key takeaway: Louisville has the capacity to invest more in ourselves. Understanding that level of investment is ultimately hopeful, because it means that we too could make different choices and potentially get better results. How we respond to the global pandemic and the civic awakening that are transforming our country and our community will define the next generation of our civic life. We can choose to hunker down and shepherd our resources with a scarcity mentality, and that is doubtless the choice that many, if not most, of our peers will make. Or we can choose to invest in new and different ways. We can choose to invest in a better Louisville. The Greater Louisville Project is a consortium of donors committed to using objective data to spur civic action. By tracking Louisville's progress across 4 deep drivers: education, 21st century jobs, health, and quality of place, we seek to inform our civic agenda by providing a common language and a common set of metrics to define progress. This analysis was sparked because the Greater Louisville Project's 15-year milestone report, released in 2019, indicated that we were not making the progress we wanted as a community across our deep drivers. We made modest gains in education, basically held steady in jobs, did all right in quality of place, and went down in health. More than that, even within the progress we are making, there are important and persistent gaps across race and geography. Those gaps particularly impact Black Louisvillians and those living in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty in the West and South Ends, making it more difficult for them to reach their full potential. And because of the persistent and systemic barriers making it more difficult for many Louisvillians, our community as a whole is not reaching its full potential. So the question is why? One aspect of that question is following the money. It's simply a matter of resources. Do other communities have more to invest than we do? The answer is no, but many of our peers are investing differently than we are. Now I want to take a second to talk about why we use a framework of peer cities to do our analysis whenever we can. Peer cities are cities who are like us across several important dimensions. And every 10 years, we adjust those peers to be sure they're still relevant. We use that framework not because we want to beat those peers. As one of GLP's longstanding board members likes to say, there's no winning being a city, just as there's no winning marriage or winning happiness. But using a peer city framework gives us a sense of what's possible. It lets us see what is working or not working in similar places. It also gives us a sense of what is the return on our civic investment relative to national trends or across individual idiosyncrasies. In this report, we focus on the level of community investment. The concept of community investment is that to a certain extent, whether money flows through the private sector, the social sector, or the public sector is less important than whether the overall level of investment is getting us the return we want in our jobs, education, health, and quality of place. As we look at the data, what we see is that our private sector, often thought of as the generator of resources, is pretty typical of our peers. And in some cases, we outperform them. Out of our 17 peer cities, we rank 8th in number of Fortune 1000 companies, 9th in volume of small business loans, 7th in venture capital investments, and 8th in median earnings. While we underperform in some areas like community development financial institutions and federally subsidized SBA loans, for the large part, the private sector, we are in the middle of our peers. But when we look to the social sector, when we first analyzed the receipts of locally headquartered nonprofits relative to our peers, what we found was, according to IRS data reported on the 990s, Louisville was at the bottom tier of our peers, 16th out of 17 in terms of donations received. As we circulated that information to our stakeholders, we found that most nonprofit leaders were either not surprised, that's why it's so hard, or relieved. It's not just me that's having this trouble. But many donors and philanthropists pushed back, saying, well, that can't be right. We must give more to churches, or we're a global city. We must give abroad. So we decided to drill down into the sources of nonprofit funding. What we found was that among households with income of more than $200,000, 97.5% of which itemized their taxes, Louisville ranked in the top tier in terms of the number of people who donated, but at the very bottom, 16th out of 17, in terms of the percentage of their income they donated. To get very concrete, Louisvillians donated 3.5% of their income on average, compared to 4.5% that was our peer city mean, and 7% that was the highest of our peers. For context, if we were at our peer city mean, that would mean that we had an additional $75 million per year to invest in our citizens. And if we were to give slightly more than our peer city average, 5% of income, that would translate into more than $100 million per year. And endowed philanthropy, the other source of those donations, born of the wealth generated in this city, cannot make up that gap. For there too, we are at the bottom of our peers, 15th out of 17. In the public sector, the analysis was the most complicated because city and county budgeting is difficult to standardize. But across two different methodologies and verified by a third external expert, Louisville ranks near the bottom of our peer cities in terms of public investment, where our peer cities like St. Louis, Nashville, and Cincinnati rank near the top. So where do we go from here? As we've been talking to stakeholders across our community, a community that has been rocked by a combination of COVID and civic action, I've been struck by two things: a sense of pride and a sense of possibility. As we attempt to reckon squarely with the injuries of the past and awaken to the injustices of the present, particularly for our communities of color, we still believe that this town can be a place where all people have the ability to thrive, where all people have a sense of belonging and hope. This report clearly shows that we have the capacity to invest more in ourselves. So the question we must ask is, what would it take to unlock that capacity? As we grapple with the implications of COVID and needed civic changes, what kind of a future do we want? How do we come together to build a better Louisville? Every community is made up of people, and all data is made up of their stories. When we tell this story in the future, the story of how Louisville responded in this pivotal moment, what is the story we will tell? The question we are asking you, and the question I hope you will ask of all the people around you, is if you could invest in one thing to make Louisville better, what would it be? Then let's go do that thing together.
Thanks to Ben and Jeff for their leadership, and thanks to everybody with JLP for putting in the work to get this together. When I first read this report, I was like, all right, we finally have the data to really allow us to see where we're at as a city. I've wondered about this quite a bit, and there's nothing quite as powerful as data to say, okay, we can make decisions to move forward. One of the things I was reminded about is a fact that I live every day as the mayor, and that is that we send about $2 billion to Frankfurt every year that does not come back to our city. So when you think about the size of our general fund, $850 million or so, that's a huge amount that I would rather have investing in our city than out in the state, but that's what comes with being the big city in Louisville. Also, it reminded me that we can all do more personally, okay? And I think when you think about that $80 million number that's there that could go to different nonprofits in the community, that could be life-changing for so many of our great nonprofits. So I really appreciate this report coming out, and it confirms what many of us have been saying for years, that we need to invest more in ourselves. And this confirmation comes at a really critical time for our city when we're facing this three-part challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic, the recession, the cries for racial justice and equity, because all of these crises, what they have done is expose the fundamental inequities in our society, and they've created an opportunity for us to have a more dynamic and equitable economy. So I'm hopeful when we get to the end of these protests, we'll be creating a more beautiful America and more beautiful in Louisville, because this is going on not just in our city, but in 2,000 cities and towns in America right now. We're living in a moment that is more favorable to fundamental change and transformation than any of us have seen in our lifetimes. And there is no going back. There is no business as usual. We've got to just keep going forward. So our challenge is going to be to recreate and reshape our economy so that we fundamentally address the problems of inequity and racial justice. In Louisville, we've been doing this work for years, but we need to do more. When you think about the $1 billion investment that's taken place in West Louisville, I've said many times, it's just a down payment. We established the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. We launched Lean Into Louisville and the Synergy Project to teach people about discrimination and racism and police community legitimacy. Workforce is super important to this, so we launched the Future of Work and Summer Works. And as a city government, we've already responded to these crises with new investments. And the budget just recently passed in partnership with the council, $8 million in affordable housing efforts, include Louisville Affordable Housing Trust Fund, addressing vacant and abandoned properties, $3.5 million to establish a community grocery in West Louisville, an additional $1 million for youth programs, and we're devoting $1.5 million to federal funds to recruit more people of color to become police officers. Louisville Forward just launched a small business COVID-19 relief grant program. Business, philanthropy, communities, along with individual donors have stepped up recently as well. An amazing $11 million was raised with the One Louisville COVID-19 Response Fund, supported now over 2,400 households and nearly 200 nonprofits, thanks to James Graham Brown Foundation, Humana, LGNEKU, Brown Forman UPS, Community Foundation of Louisville, and many, many others. Humana's $11.5 million commitment to racial equity, including $6.5 million to the Urban League Sports and Learning Complex, is great. So we need a lot more of this kind of citizenship, leadership, and investment. And we need investing in our community at a higher level to be a fundamental part of the culture of our city, where each of us say, how can I do more? How can my company do more? This is how world-class cities are built. And in this three-part opportunity crisis we have right now, we need everybody to contribute so we can do more to restore the economy that we had last year. Now, that economy didn't work for enough people. So addressing the inequities exacerbated by the pandemic, that's the goal of Build Back Better Together initiative, which we launched in April. B3T is what I call that, is about dismantling systemic racism and creating dynamic economic growth for everybody. This initiative is led by a diverse steering committee of community, civic, business, and nonprofit leaders, which continues to grow in numbers, almost 1,000 people now. And here's the specific focus areas: arts and culture, built and natural environment, the economy, education and talent development, health and safety, hospitality, sports, and urbanism, and last, social infrastructure and impact. For B3T to succeed, we are working to engage all Louisvillians and all neighborhoods in our efforts to create a robust economic and human recovery, to adapt or accelerate existing government and community-led projects to meet the needs of the entire community, to seek out and incorporate innovative ideas from people of all ages, backgrounds, and neighborhoods. So I encourage all Louisville residents to sign up for one or more of the focus area teams by visiting louisvilleky.gov/buildbackbetter. Marilyn Wiederwald can tell you more about it as well. So the people of our city and our country are demanding change. And it's not just government that has to respond, it's all of us. And while the Greater Louisville Project is sobering in some ways, it also should be galvanizing. It's time for us to take bold steps we've never taken, because the stakes are high and the time is right. America is looking for leadership, for examples of cities that are innovative, equitable, and compassionate, and put resources behind those values to light the way forward. Louisville can be that city. That's our aspiration. We don't need to imitate the past. We need to create the future, a future where every child grows up knowing that their city has paths open to them so that their full human potential can flourish. So thanks again to the Greater Louisville Project for assembling these critical data, and I look forward to the conversation we'll have to keep our city going forward. Thanks, everybody.
I'm Ann Coffey, CEO of the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. The nonprofit social impact sector provides vitally needed services for our entire community in healthcare and education, public safety, healthy children and families, parks, arts, environment, and animal welfare. In every part of the community, the nonprofit sector delivers essential, high-value services with massive social and economic impacts. Nonprofits are one of the first responders to deliver food, medicine, and other basic needs in a crisis, and they're the first to fight for justice and fairness for all people. The sector is also the fourth largest employer, an eighth of the Louisville economy, and often provides a career path for those in neighborhoods who most need investment. And we often talk about our community as the three-legged stool made up of the public, the private, and the nonprofit sectors. And for a community to thrive, we need all three legs of the stool to be sturdy and strong. For a very long time, the nonprofit sector has been asked to do more. Problems are getting bigger and resources aren't keeping up. We know if we're going to solve big problems in our community, we must come together and solve this together. Measuring what we do is also important. Dan Pallotta, one of our sector's thought leaders, suggests we need to shift our focus from measuring overhead expenses to impact. We should invest in the tools that make the private sector successful: talent, marketing, technology, and so forth. We have to invest to succeed. We must have conversations with our larger community about the real cost of scaled, effective social and cultural impact. The bottom line is this: for our community to thrive, we must have much higher level of impact, and that takes investment. Thanks.
Hi, Louisville. I'm Padma Autre. I'm a trustee at the Community Foundation of Louisville, and I'm also a trustee at the James Graham Brown Foundation, and I am a member of the policy board of the Greater Louisville Project. It's really my privilege and delight to talk to you about personal-private philanthropy. Personal-private philanthropy is so critical to the health of our community. It's an expression of our individual passions and interests. It can be faster and more responsive to emerging needs. And in this way, it can be innovative and creative. It can direct our attention to new areas that need the focus and support of corporate foundations, philanthropy, large private foundations, and government. So in this way, private philanthropy acts as a lighthouse or a spotlight. Individual giving can support the institutions and organizations that already have long histories and legacies of making our community great. And individual giving can also be the do something money that catalyzes new projects that need attention right now. The GLP data is telling us that if Louisville's high income households increase their individual giving to 1% more of their total income, the city's nonprofit and religious sectors would receive an additional $80 million in donations. As I think about that potential increased pot of funds, I just wonder what the city could look like. What could that mean for hunger, for education, for music, art, parks? What could it mean for homeownership? What could it mean for equity? How could this help our community heal? And what legacies could this leave for our children and for their children? I don't know. I don't know what it could mean for our city, but I would love for us to find out together.
I'm Tricia Finnegan with the Community Foundation of Louisville. Today we're talking about philanthropic giving and what it would look like to expand charitable and philanthropic giving in this community. What we know is beyond basic needs, people expend their resources with what they care about. At the Community Foundation of Louisville, we work with individuals, families, multiple generations of a family, corporations, and foundations here across our community and those across the country. And we hear one thing consistently. People come to us with a really good idea and are really motivated by what they care about. The questions they often ask us are, how can they make an impact toward the causes, issues, and people that they care about? Where can they invest their money? How can they ensure their money is going to make the greatest impact? And so it is our belief that if we can connect with people, understand what they care about, and help them feel confident about making the impact that they hope to create, then we will have an increase in philanthropic giving.
Hello, I am Dr. Brandy Kelly Pryor, Senior Director of Programs at the Humana Foundation and Greater Louisville Project Policy Board member. I know that we have everything that we need for this community to thrive. It's just time for us now to open up our hands, give, and lock arms in doing it. It is going to take a multi-sectored approach. The business community, the business corporations like Humana Foundation have to be at the table, as well as for us to co-create with the community members and the partners that know the solutions to the problems and to the answers that we have in this community. It is time for us to build capacity together, to promote health, purpose, and belonging for all of us in this community, and to thrive together and be the compassionate and hopeful city that I know that we are.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Wiederwohl, the Chief of Louisville Forward in Louisville Metro Government. In my job every day, I get to oversee economic and community development alongside several hundred people here in Louisville Forward and get to work on the shared hopes, dreams, and aspirations of thousands of us in Louisville Metro Government. And the work that we do every day is part of a tri-sector partnership that makes a successful city. The business and private sector coming together with the nonprofit sector and the governmental sector. That's what makes success. We have an interesting role to play as government because a lot of times we do what no one else can or will do. But we also have a very important role to catalyze. Sometimes we come in and make the investment, which is then followed by a significant multiplier in private investment. That's what we need to do more of here in Louisville. Frankly, for too many years, we've been throwing nickels and dimes at problems that require dollars. And whether that's federal dollars, state dollars, or local dollars, this is a problem across all of our governmental levels. We need to invest in the neighborhoods that have seen decades of strategic discrimination and disinvestment. That's how we confront structural racism in the built environment. And we need to invest in people, programs, training, upskilling, opportunities to get a college degree or a credential that allows you to get a family supporting wage. These are the kind of investments that successful cities are making, and they come together across all of those sectors to figure out how to get it done. When we work in economic development, there are two truths about every project we work. It's about people and place. It's about talent and real estate. You've got to play well on both fronts, and you've got to make the investments to bring success to the city. Sometimes in this business, I get the opportunity to answer one of my favorite questions. What does success look like for you? And this is a long-term answer, but you got to work at it every day. And my dream for Louisville is that every child has an opportunity to grow up in a mixed income neighborhood of choice. The data is clear. If we make that possible and provide that young child the opportunities to get an education and to live in a safe, mixed income neighborhood of choice, we will become the city that we claim we want to be. To get there, we have to invest in ourselves.
My name is David James. I'm the president of Metro Council. I'm the district councilman for District Number 6. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how we invest in our city, or the lack thereof. When you walk down your sidewalk every day and you talk about that lump in the sidewalk, or that's where you always trip at on the sidewalk, and you say, well, why hasn't the city fixed that? Well, the reason the city hasn't fixed that is because it requires a great deal of self-investment to do that. And what I mean by that, in the 6th district alone, we have roughly $3 million of sidewalks that need repairing. And our entire budget for sidewalks for the entire city is somewhere around $2 million every single year. So you can see we have a long way to go. Or when you drive down the roadway and you say, why doesn't the city fix this road? This road has been in disrepair for a long time. Well, we have well over $100 million worth of investment that we need to make in our roadways just to get them all to a safe standard level. And so we do that little by little every year, $15 million a year, $20 million a year, and we eventually try to work our way there. And you say, well, other cities, they have really great sidewalks and they have really great roadways. How do they do that? Well, they invest more in their cities. That's how they do that. When you go to Cincinnati and see that fantastic waterfront, you go down to Nashville and see all the things they're doing, they are investing more and more dollars into themselves. And so we in Louisville, we haven't been doing that. Whether we're talking about public tax dollars, public-private partnerships, nonprofits, we have to do more if we want to be the things that we want to be. And so I'm just saying that I am encouraging us to dream big and be that thing that we want to be. But we cannot do it. We cannot do it unless we invest in ourselves.
Hello, my name is Amy Shearer. I'm the president and CEO of L-Home. L-Home is Louisville's locally headquartered, nonprofit, certified CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. Investing in a CDFI like L-Home is an equity investment. It's an impact investment, because what we do is we invest in small businesses and community members that have lacked access to affordable capital and financial education. For example, in the east end of Louisville, there is a banker for every 200 people. And in the west end of Louisville, there is a banker for every 1,600 people. So if you don't have access to a mainstream financial institution, what you do have access to are predatory lenders on every block. Louisville is very underinvested in CDFIs. And one of the ways that our city can change that is by bringing more private investment into CDFIs, which in turn then brings investment to our small business community. There are a number of ways that investors can invest in CDFIs, from venture capital firms to financial institutions using CRA, which is Community Reinvestment Act, credit to invest in CDFIs, and the multiplier on those investments is really great.
Hello, my name is Gina Dunlap, and I'm a community investment specialist with the Louisville Coordinated Community Investment Project. It's been really an honor to do this work here in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. I'm learning a lot. Perhaps one of the most important things that I'm learning is about the different sectors of community investment, including philanthropy, the public sector, the financial industry sector, the corporate sector, academia, and of course the nonprofit sector that keeps us going in the world of community development. From the outside looking in, it may seem that we're more coordinated than we are, but one of the early lessons is that there are deep silos between those various sectors of community investment. And in a medium-sized town like Louisville, it's sort of counterintuitive to think that we could be sitting next to someone in church, at the office, at the tennis courts together, living our lives together, but not always sharing about our work, what we're excited about professionally, and where our passions lie with regard to creating and catalyzing impact in the community. So myself and my colleague, Lynette Glass, we're working diligently to remove those silos, to get more coordinated and ultimately better aligned in terms of where our community investment is directed, for what purpose, and to the benefit of which communities that so desperately need it.